Good evening, dear friend. Tonight, allow yourself to drift away to another time, another light. Take in a deep, calming breath and gently exhale. Let your body rest, your mind open, and your thoughts begin to wander. You are no longer surrounded by neon lights and city sounds. Instead, you are nestled deep within the folds of time. Hundreds of years ago, in the misty heart of the medieval world, you are seated in a gently rocking carriage, leather-lined, warm, but cramped, as its wooden wheels creak one final time over the muddy pad outside. The wind hums softly, teasing the heavy velvet curtains. Each rumble of the carty wheels fades into sigh, because this is the end of your journey. The carriage slabber, and as you push aside the curtain and catch your first glimpse of it, not the destination of your exile. No, this is your domain. This is your cashin, not someone else's. The land over which you will rule, the fortress that will hold your footsteps, your stories, your future. It is not the fairy tale castle of spinning golden towers and perfect guard. It rises instead from a broad, sloping mound of earth, a motte as they call it, high above the plain, solid and unshakable. Thick walls of weathered gray stone climb into the sky, flush with battlements, harboring secrets behind every slit of a wind. A wooden palisade, rough and towering, surrounds the outer edge like a crown of thorns pressed into the flesh of the land. The moat below glints with water, dark and still. Cool as iron, it mirrors the cloudy sky, broken only by the soft clack of the drawbridge, now lowering to receive you the horses. Hoof wheels grind, the wooden bridge groans and shudders breathe in. Slow, and again you've arrived. As the carriage rolls forward, it passes through a thick stone arch, the gatehouse or barbican, a kind of bottleneck, part tunnel, part trap, designed to slow invaders but usher in its mat. And that master is you. The gate closes behind, severing the echo of the outside worth. You step down onto the packed earth of the outer courtyard. The bale, it is bis almost, cheercore the air, not modern exhaust fumes or blinking electronas. No, here you smell wood smoke and fresh hay, clove-charred embers clinging to rough wool cloak, wet soil hugged tight against the roots of kitchen hearth, the faint tang of horses, warm breathing, alive, the sharp clip of tools against metal ring, X-spray left tools a king, clang, clang, ek blank, naik. Crackling fire crackles beneath his bellows. Children chase 3 scruffy chickens across the yard, egling. Young women call to each other over the stone well, laughter bouncing off the walls like falling water. Every corner of the courtyard hums with activity, but none of it rock. Here there is a steadiness to it. It breathes beyond it. Another gate, thin, tall, you step through it, and silence fall. The inner court still quiet. Even your own footfalls hush themselves beneath the weight of its saya. And there, in the center, the heart of it all, stands the keep, the main town, the castle in Seoul, gray stone street, faintly green with moss. Its windows narrow like watchful eyes hidden behind stone brows, its corners jagged, built to break not only the wind, but time itself. It rises above you, not like a building, but like a prefs, the silent sentinel of your life to come. For hand lifts, instinctively, pressing lightly to your chest. Your breath deepens. You've never seen anything like this, not in your dreams, not in your bows. A woman approaches, dressed simply but neatly, her hands clasped in front of her, eyes lowered politely. She is your lead maidservant without a word. She gestures for you to follow, and so you do. Passing under yet another arch, the stone grows copley. Dark ascent of the forge fades, replaced now by old stone. Dampness, wax your boots strike against the floor. Firm, deliberate, quiet, in the occasional gust of ancient air up a spiral stair, step by step, You clutch the banister. It is strong but worn smooth from countless fingers. Long gone finally, you reach the upper hall, and then your chamber, your private whir. It is spacious, larger than your expedi, a gonverobi, allowing you to peek out across the courtyard far below. Through it, you see the smith, the hay carts, the square bales stacked like childhood dream. The trees beyond wave slightly with wind. Dusk is ascending now. The light turns copper, then red, then slowly, indigo. Inside the walls are stone, firm, immovable, cold thick. Tapestries hang down from iron rods, heavy with woven stories. Tales frozen in thread, unicorns, falcons, vine-crossed archways. But they're not just decorative. You touch one, it muffles the wind slicing through the cracks. Stoned as intensely, these threads are your defense against the chill. There is no glass on your wind with oil sewn into wooden frames and slotted over the openings. The light that filters through is gauzy, dim, golden tinged as though the world outside were already dream. Your bed waits, and it is like nothing you've slept in before. It does not merely hold you, it contains you. It is so large you could lie across it twice. Thick curtains hang from an overhead canopy. Plush, velvet, and dark as forest night, they'll be drawn close tonight. Not for prior, but to hold in even the faintest thread of heat, and to keep the spiders from falling from the beams above. Yes, life here is different. You run your hand along the stone wall. It is wet, cool. You pull your fingers back, wipe them gently on your sleeve. No central heating, no electric light. But here, there is peace and simplicity, a clarity. The air smells of sheep beam wool and burned tallow, of dried lavender and something earthy, almost metallic, that clings to damp stone. Your maidservants busy themselves silently. They set your basin on the table. Inside it, warm water, steam curls above its surface like ghostly fin. She put a sprig of rosemary in it, and a few tiny flowers, lavender, perhaps. The scent is faint, dry, clean. You dip your fingers in. It feels soothing. You run water across your face, watching it drip onto the linen edge of your ship. No soap, only scent. You're told this purifies the air, because here, they don't yet understand bacteria. They believe sickness travels on smell, an ancient idea, the miasma theory, where foul odors carry deadly ill. So to smell sweetness is to be safe. To wrap your room in herbs is to protect your sores. You feel protect your soul. You feel protect however distant this world may seem. It accepts you. It offers. And slowly your breath begins to match its rhythm. You are a praetess. You are the new lady of this its heartbeat. And as the last light leaves the sky, you sit on the edge of your wide canopied bed. The silence of ancient stone wraps around you like a blanket of snow. Stillness sinks deep into the floor. Walk window panes. Let it hold you. Let it quiet everything that came before you or home and your story. You follow the quiet hush of footsteps, soft against smooth stone. As your maid leads you deeper into the keep. Another turn, another corridor laid with chilly flagstones, their polished edges worn by the passage of countless lags. At last she pushes open a heavy oak door, its iron hinges groaning in slow welcome. She steps aside and gestures wordless. This is your chamber, your new word. The air inside feels still, undisturbed, dust particles. All is calm. You take your first step inside. It is not cramped or narrow like the drafty rooms of the servants or soldiers. This is the upper floor of the great keep. The air is just as cold, but the space is generous. High-beamed ceilings, thick timber rafters, greased stone walls smoothed and fortified. But it's not the size that captures you. It's the war between opulence and servile. The stone walls are dressed in thick embroidered tapestries, deep greens, earthy reds, browns woven with golden threads. If you look closer, you can just make out scenes. A stag pierced by arrows, a knight kneeling before a radiant lady. These woven stories whisper of other lives. of old love, of virtue, of sorrow. But their purpose is not only beau. You reach out and touch the fabric. Heavy, dense, you feel it immediately. Heavy, dense, you feel it immediately. The tapestry breathes warmth into what would otherwise be unbearable. It doesn't decorate. It protects, just like everything else in the room. To your left, a tall four-poster bed, far larger than you imagined. It stands like an altar against the wall, massive, almost theatrical. At each corner, carved wooden pillars stretch upward like the trunks of ancient trees, where a canopy of deep violet velvet hangs heavy above. Long curtain panels fall from its edges, enclosing the bed in thick folds, as though making a secret vow. De regard to warm to us, you draw one aside. Inside, the mattress smells faintly of straw and beeswax, of clean linen and smoke of the softest night. The sheets are made of woven linen, smooth in some places, scratchy in others. The coverlet is thick quilted wool, aged and well used. You imagine yourself curling into it. You wonder if it will truly keep the cold out. You wonder how cold the room might become by midnight. Artine, looking up, you notice small wooden beams crossing the ceiling high above. They beautiful in their raw, unfinished way, but your maid gently closes the bed curtain again, murmuring something unclear. Even royalty cannot soften the nature of beams, dust, and crawling things, and so. The curtains serve two purrs. You sit on the edge of the bed just for a moment. The wood creaks gently beneath your weight. You listen. Through the faint, thick air, you hear it in the cry of a hawk far beyond the tower, the slight whistle of wind pressing against old shutters, and somewhere in the inner court the distant clink of iron meeting fire. You rise again, walking slowly toward the window, to one that juts out over the courtyard below. This protruding alcove is unexpected. It bends outward like a pocket. You settle there, leaning forward. You see the courtyard now from above. The last traces of daylight stretch their fingers along rooftops and hay carts. The forge has gone out, and smoke spirals from only one or two chimneys. A stable hand guides a sleepy horse across the cobbles. Everything moves slowly, like a breath before sleep. Behind you, the maid lays out a thick wool nightgown near the foot of the bed, and upon a small wooden table, set out carefully under a single candle, she places a wash basin. Steam rises gently from the copper bowl. Inside, you spot sprigs of lavender, rosemary, perhaps a crushed leaf of sage. You walk over the steam, fogs your face briefly. You lean down and inhale it. It smells clean, not like soap, but like crushed herbs, warm, earthy, fragrant. Grounding, you dip your hands in. The water is warm. You scoop some gently onto your face, feeling it trace across your skin, drawing the chill away for just a moment. A pause in the coal, you look around. There is no pipe, no faucet, no fire beneath the surface. Someone hauled this up for you, heated the water, picked the herbs, carried the bowl silently, as if they knew before you did that you do want it. And indeed they did. Ice is the first hint of what you will soon understand far too well. You are never alone. Everywhere you go within these walls, someone is already near. A shadow behind a curtain, a figure sitting silently in the corner of the chamber, a footstep behind yours as you walk down the corridor. Even now, a young girl, hardly older than 15, pulls out a narrow bed from beneath yours. A wooden frame with a woven mattress, tiny in comparison. You blink, startled, and ask softly, "But she sleeps here." The older maid nods with gentle pride. "She is your night servant. She will be near. She will be near." All the small bed is called a trundle bed, tattered slid beneath yours like a forgotten drawer. By day it disappears. By night, he emerges carrying the one who sees you in your deepest sleep, who wakes at your faintest cough, who relight the candle when the wind teases it out. There is no bell to summon them, no rope, no chain. You're never meant to call. They're simply already here, like a silence that lities. You finally begin to understand. This room, this sanctuary, however beautiful or vast, is no refuge of sodded, not because you are important, and importance in this age means never being left alone. You are perplexed at this closeness, this constant presence. You don't mistrust it, but you aren't yet at ease with it moments ago. You walk the keep like something untouchable, a quiet shadow floating above the servants' chatter. And now, you realize you're the flame they gather around. You whisper a question, your first small test of this arrangement. Could you come here a moment? One of the attendants, standing so still in the corner you had assumed she was furniture, immediately stirs to life. She crosses to you, kneels, and waits calmly for in strife. There is nothing to ask. You simply nod. She bows her head softly and returns to her post. Not a word more. That is how it works. You do not need to summon those who never left. You are watched, yes, but not in suspicion. You are guarded, cradled, still. Beneath it all, you feel the press of something else. A quiet yearning for a moment to be unseen, for silence that belongs only to you. You wonder if such a thing can ever exist here, a place where every step is heard, every breath antenna. This is being the sun caught in an orbit. You shine and everything moves. Because of you, but what happens when you long to flicker? You exhale slowly, the candlelight dances behind your lids. The warmth of rosemary still clings faintly to your cheeks. You can hear her breaths, slow, even a winged hud. You move toward your own bed. Draw. Shut the last velvet drape. Ride the world outside the curtain fades. I mend, for the first time since arriving. In this hush, in this stillness, you feel the weight not only of the gown on your shoulders, not only of the first gentle touch of sovereignty, of being something more than a guest, more than a daw. You are not here to be served, you are here to rule. But first, you must rest. Let the stone cradle you. Let the night fold in. Let sleep reach out to catch you like ivy, slow, soft, and silent tomorrow. The keys will come, but tonight, you dream, you breathe, and you belong. You wake to the dim glow of dawn. Pale light filters through the linen-covered windows. It stains the stone walls with a soft gold, trembling through layers of waxed fabric that keep out the chill but not the morning. Narsted, it is. Meet before your eyes even open completely. You're aware of movement, silent, graceful, always present. A maid has already lit the fire in the small hearth across the room. You hear it crackle faintly now, the scent of burning oak mixing with the faded aromas of yesterday's herbs. A clean linen shift is folded neatly at the foot of your bed, and your breakfast tray is nowhere to be seen, and will not be. But that discovery comes later, narc for now. Your thoughts drift elsewhere, back to the night before, and the way your own breathing seemed too loud in a room where silence was never truly yours. Dress and pull a shawl tight around your shoulders before opening the door. The corridor leads you to a long gallery cloaked in shadow, its windows turned eastward like quiet watchers of the sky. The keep is drowsy with morning, but beneath the hush, the castle already lives. Footsteps move just out of sight. Keys jingle, doors thump gently, water pail slosh. Ripe, you're not sure what led you to look behind the tapestry in that far corner. Perhaps it was instinct, perhaps the flick of chill that slipped through the seams, perhaps it was always meant, right? The thick drapery shifts with effort, and behind it, a doorway, small, stone-framed. A wooden door, barely wider than your shoulders. You open it. Darkness, a passage, narrow, winding, curling between the walls. Now you hesitate, then take one step, then another. The torch in your hand casts a shaky circle of gold against the stone, something that feels like sepia. Your fingers trail along the wall as you creep forward. The passage bends, then splits, one way, down the other, across. You probe deeper. You realize what this is. Not a place for escape, no winding hero and tunnel. The hallways for servants mound for the unseen, built into the very bones of the keep. Your servants don't simply appear by magic. You now understand. They move through this. These passages are how your basin was filled without a sound. How the candles were replaced, the curtains drawn, and then you notice it. A small round opening in the stone wall, no wider than a coin, looking through. You see the corner of your own chin, You step back, several more of these peepholes follow. A glimpse into the great hall, the kitchen, the chapel, each one vantage, each one an eye. And now your understanding deepens. What seems like magic to a guest is invisible labor to those who serve. The cup of wine that appears as if summoned, the bed turned down before you stand to leave the room. None of it is spontaneous. Marred, it is watched, measured, felt through old stone passageways and tiny windows in forgotten walls. And if you are the heart of this keep, pulsing, quick, unseen, you step backward, gently pull the tapestry back over the doorway, and let the waking light of day warm your skin once again. Your torch dies with a hiss. Mighty do not speak of it, but you remember Alf K. and a long aching quiet in your chamber. You're summoned not with a shout, but with a polite knock and low gesture, down to the great hall where something waits you. You descend the spiral stairs, fingertips, grazing stone. They lead you to the largest open space in the entire castle, to breath of the keep, the hall where judgments are given. Feasters gather, and names are remented. Today, it is quiet, except for the sound of boots on flagstone. Polite waiting, you see them before you reach the dais. The steward, your senior maid. 2 guards at attention, straight-backed and beside them. Your chamberlain, he holds something in both hands. A velvet hood upon it, a glinted silver chains, delicate hooks, a decorative clasp from which dangle keys not one. Many they chime softly with the smallest motion, catching the stained glass light from the chapel windows and scattering the color over your dress like a bleve. The chamberlain steps forward and kneels, voice clear but revered, "Lady of the castle." The word rolls in your ears like thunder made soft. He continues, "By right, these now pass to you, the keys and all they open, the goods and all they guard." He lifts the cushion. You reach out. Take them in hand. Cold flows into your palm. The keys are not large, but they are weighty, smoothed by the fingers of women long before you. Some are simple. One is etched with floral patterns. Another, small and narrow glints with a gemstone set into its bow, deep red, a garnet. You hook the chain at your side. The keys settle against your waist, clinking faintly against your skirts. The sound feels right. A promise. A promise. A pow. This one, the steward says, pointing gently, bouillies for the larder, bread, flour, dried meats and grind. He touches another, the wine and ale cellar, and the garnet key, the spice cabinet. For pepper, clove, saffron, even cinnamon, dearer than gold, lady, and guarded like a dragon hoards its sleep. You try to smile? It almost reaches your lips, but inside, something has shippened until now. You are adjusting learning. Now, you are named. You are entrusted, mental, with food, with warmth, in a world where walls protect more than people. The one who holds the keys protects all. You walk back through the keep that day with a different sound at your side, the quiet chink of chains against metal, the murmur of whispered respect, the lowering of eyes, not in fear, but in recognition. You are not a child kept here for safety, nor a wife sent to wait in stone. You are sovereign here, mistress of fire and storehouse, the keeper of flesh, salt, wine, linen, labor, and time. One day they may sing of queens in distant lands. But here, in this enclosed world of ringing iron and honest mud, it is not a crown that makes the mistress. Not rose here. It is the weight of a ring of keys. Bon cool clear. Nister. And now, they rest at your heel. You awaken with a hunger so gentle it almost feels like memory. Ninake, that winds through your belly like a ribbon, not loud, but persistent. The kind of hunger that wakes before your eyes, due whispering to your limbs, inviting you toward warmth and food and the quiet reassurance of something familiar. You stretch beneath the heavy coverlet, your fingers grazing the embroidered seams of the pillowcase, the lace fray at its edges, the crispness of sheets that have absorbed the cold air of the room. The fire has dwindled to mere embers, glowing faintly from the hearth, its warmth distant now. But the room is not unpleasant. It smells of smoke and rosemary, and something else. Anticipation. Perhaps you expect, as always, that someone will appear with a tray, perhaps warm bread slathered in honey, soft cheese, a bowl of oats thick and sweet, touched with cinnamon, but the door remains closed, the room undisturbed. The servants, though awake, bring no scent of food into your chain. Instead, your maid gently lays out your morning shawl and a simple veil with a small book resting near them. Ta Salter. She bows without words, as though noting nothing amiss. Somewhere within, confusion begins to bloom, as you are guided not to the fire-warmed benches of a breakfast table, but to the solemn hush of the chapel. A sense of dissonance begins to settle across your shoulders like a second cloak. You close your eyes in the prayer hall, reciting the familiar verses, but more acutely attuned now to the empty space in your body. By the time you return to your room and sink into the cushioned bench by the window, the ache in your stomach has become heavier, almost intrusive. And in your patience, you finally ask softly and politely, when your meal shall arrive. Your maid pauses, then tilts her head with an expression that mixes surprise and distorhe, the kind of surprise that does not come from being startled. "Bull, my lady me," she says gently, "but you must be mistaken. Nobles do not break their fast." She smiles faintly, trying to make it sound like a kindness. "Only the weak. Children, peasants who must till the soil in the dark, for those who are strong of body and soul. We wait. We wait for the proper meal. At midday." You want to protest, kindly, curiously, but your words catch behind your lips, because the answer, strange though it sounds, feels as deeply rooted in this place as the stone beneath your feet. Here things are not only done, they are believed. They are inherited. You listen as she tells you that midday brings the first true meal of the day. Eat dinner, a ceremony in itself, a moment of collective rhythm and shared affirmation. But to eat before that, to demand sustenance with the rising sun, that would speak, not strength, but indulgence, the whispered insistence on restraint of the spiritual weight given to fasting, of how the night is seen not merely as a time of physical rest, but a sacred interval of deny. To break that fast too early is to break something more than hunger. It is to break fave. You imagine how, for those who labor in the fields, rise before the light touches the soil, sustenance is necessity. But for you, a noble woman, to gnaw bread in the dawn light is to confess weakness. Instead, you must sit upright, you must be dignified, you must learn to hunger beauté, and so, you wait, you listen to reports from the lands, to your stewarded gentle explanations of crop yields and feed supplies, to the tally of eggs collected and barns mended. You sip gently spiced wine from a brass cup, warm and rich, but utterly devoid of bread. To anchor it, no one comes. They never do, because they do not see restraint as denial. They see it as poi, and somehow, in the quiet grit of your endurance, something within you begins to relent. By the time the bells toll for noon, and the hall fills with quiet footsteps, and the clatter of pewter plates being set, your body has become hollow and attentive. Every scent seems more vivid, the scent of herb-roasted meat curling through the smoke, the honeyed weight of baked apples, the crackle of bread just as it splits in half, all of it more than flay. It is reward, it is ritual. You are seated at the long table near the front of the hall, flanked by your most trusted retainers. A hush lingers as the first course arrives, light sweet, meant to stir appetite, dried fruit soaked in wine, and scattered with pine nuts. A gesture from the east perfumed with clove and dusted gently with shuman, and you remember another whisper from your steward, a recollection of the beliefs that guide every mouthful. The four humors, ancient medicine, born of Greece and carried reverently into every noble house, every healing room, every cooker hand. Blood, phlegm, black bile, and yellow bile, each linked to a quality. Heat, cold, wet, dry, each aching to be bowed. You are not simply eating, You are he the duck, spiced with cumin and ginger, is meant to raise your inner warmth. The earthy stew of lentils and leeks softens dry temperament. A sweet almond milk custard closes the meal. Believed to soothe, even the warm wine that follows is no idle pairing. Is the nursemaid of digestion, the guardian of your internal bactet. Every flavor is carefully selected, not just to please your tongue, but to speak harmony into your ba. Food here is not li, it is meta, it is philosophy. It is the language of the body alignment with God of plan. You find yourself studying the dishes with new eyes, not as meals, but as mezzes. In this place to eat is not only to live. It is to obey the stars, to balance the cold and settle the bile. Even sweetness, such as the sugar candies offered at the end of the feast, is not frivolous. They ease the humors, help the body close its feast with grace, and you once craving bread in the moon and early light, now feel as if you passed through a quiet trial of spirit, a test not of willpower, but of belonging. In the silence of that satisfied moment you reflect not with criticism but curiosity. Why did you hunger so fiercely at dawn? Was it merely habit, or had your modern sense of rhythm been rushing past a kind of dead? Did you measure energy? Even fash, you look around the hall as light spills through narrow windows, blinking gold across the table. The wood glows like honey. You hear forks scrape dull against trenchers, a low laugh, the shifting of boo. You sip your wine, already thinking of your next responsibilities. But for now, your body answers differently. It sinks, gently, satisfied not just in hunger, but in thought, and perhaps for the first time, you fully grasp that in this world, the rhythms are not yours to bend. And you must unfold with it. The days begin to settle into a rhythm, though not one you control at first. It moves around you like a living thing, slow, vast, indifferent, and you feel like a visitor, a feather caught in the wind of something ancient. But gradually, so gradually, you begin to move with it, not because you're forced to, but because you begin to understand its pull. It begins when your steward lays a tall, leather-bound book upon your chamber table, the corners reinforced with worn brass, its binding heavy, stiff with years. The book smells of beeswax and old parchment, with the faintest hint of dried lavender clinging in its creases. Its title is written in Latin at the cover top edge, but translated softly by your teacher, a lean, aging priest who once served the court as a tutor, de corpore politico, on the body politic. He places it before you like someone offering a map, or perhaps a mirror. You look at him curiously, and he explains, with a voice as soft as candlelight, of when you wish to govern well, my lady, you must first understand what it is you are truly governing. He sees your confusion, and with gentle patience he begins to explain that a kingdom, a manor, a castle, any domain of power can be understood not as a body. Political living, breathe the idea is old, he tells you, older than your lands, older than the very stones in the chapel walls. The philosopher John of Salisbury once said, "The prince is the head, the clergy is the soul, the judges and officials are the senses, the soldiers are the arms." When you tilt your head and think about your calf, you picture the cook chasing chickens in the mud before sunrise, the guards pacing the curtain walls, stamping their feet to keep warm. You see your steward bent over his inkpot, calculating bushels and taxes. You see your priest, this very man, guiding quiet songs of prayer through the chapelly nave. And then you see yourself, seated at the top of it all, listening, thinking, deciding. So you ask softly, "Avond, what does that make me?" The priest meets your eyes and smiles. You are the head, the mind, the one who must think for all the rest. But more than that. He leans closer. You are also the fission, the one who must sense what is wrong, what is weak or sick or tired, and bring it back to strength. You must care for your household as you would care for your own flesh. The room is quiet after this. You look down at your own hands. Small, pale, clean, the hands of a lady. And yet, they carry the world, and from that moment on, something small shifts inside you. Like a hinge falling finally into place, you begin to observe differently. Each morning, you walk the long corridors of the keep, but now you notice if Baderi is running low on butter, if the horses are too lean, or the hay too dry. You begin to step into the spaces you once avoided, the laundry room with its warmth and wet linen, the granary where dust floats in shafts of morning light. You crouch in the stables with the farrier, learning how hooves are cleaned. You watch the smith and apprentice, hammer and cool, metal into something sharp but shaped. You run your hand along velvet thaton being cut for the chapel drapes, and you ask simply where it was purchased, who wove it, what it cost, not because you wish to interfere in everything, but because you are the hen, and the head must know, as each day folds into the next. Your knowledge multiplies, not from books now, but from bone and wood and fire. You become fluent in the castle's silent language, the way the walls sweat in early spring, the way a maid coughs to among the guards when payment comes late. You begin to recognize delay, strain, waste. Like a doctor listening to breath, you quietly rearrange the kitchen in winter stores. You order more ashwood for cooking, slower to burn but warmer on the tongue. In soup, you set stricter hours for the washing of linens, not out of harshness, but to preserve both water and bone. You bring a second priest to review the minor injuries among servants and ensure clean stitching and herbal poultice. And slowly, the murmurs begin, not of dissent, of trust. They begin looking to you, a cook who once only bowed, begins to make small recommendations. Shyly, carefully, you ask to taste early batches of ale. The brewmaster smiles for the first time. You approve an adjusted grain mix for the livestock, and the stable boy, barely tall enough to meet your eyes, says in one breathless sentence, "The horses seem less tired now. My lady, they say my lady differently. Now, not out of etiquette, from respect wrapped in warmth, and outside your walls, the land responds too. Fields are balanced by your orders, wheat in one, legumes in another, rotating across seasons. Your steward reports fewer pests, stronger grain. The miller brings flour that whiter, loaves rise taller, and when you open the pantry at weekend end, you begin to see something simple, gleaming in the clean order of it all. Not pride, not wealth, but health, melons, balance, harmony, the body doing what the body must do sometimes, late at night, when the keep falls quiet and every candle has long gone out. You sit by the hearth with your psalter and think. You think about how once you do seen power as something far away, a crown, a throne, a decree sent from court, but here it is dirt under your nails, the flick of a quill into a ledger, the careful paring of a list of supplies with the seasons. And slowly, gently, gloriously, you are no longer adjusting to the rhythm of this place you. Har rhythm. The rhythm. You are both heartbeat and wisdom. Not simply a princess sent away for marriage or exa, you have become a Garin, not with sword or seal, but with sight, with listening, with the elegant invisible discipline of understanding a world that most only brush against, because this castle, this strange, cold, marvelous machine, is not just your home, it is your body. No sunshine pierces the clouds today, and the air carries the scent of wet stone and distant hearth fire, of old wood damp with memory. But still there is movement within your castle, purposeful and alert, because this day is unlike others. They call it the Manor Court, and though you have read of such things, brief lines and dusty chronicles, mentions of old customs handed from lord to heir like a patchwork standard, this will be your first, not in study, not in play, but in practice, in power. The great hall has been prepared. Long benches pulled into rows, tables cleared of their usual midday clutter. The hearth has been relit, not for comfort but for presence. Fire, after all, is a kind of witness. It crackles now like a whispering crass, and at its head, beneath the stained glass window shaped in the rose of St. Margaret, stands your chair, your high-back seat. Not quite a throne, but unmistakably a symbol of position, of weight. Crafted of carved walnut, polished, to a dark gleam, tall enough that whoever sits there must assume stillness. You walk the length of the hall, the hem of your gown brushing against the flagstones, the soft jingle of keys at your hip punctuating each step. Your castle in music, soft and metallic. No one speaks as you ascend the dais. All eyes watch. From the steward to the groomsman, from the smith to the quiet cook-a-boy in the corn when you sit. Something subtle shifts in the room, not loud or dramatic, but perceptible, as if the very weight of the castle has bowed in recognition. At your side, your steward stands as advisor, his ledger in hand, his eyes steady and calm. This is where he belongs, in service, in knowledge, beside you. But here, for the first time, he does not lead. He waits, quiet, deferent, cue you to begin. The first case is called forward, and with it comes the awkward shuffling of two men, neither young, both with the sun-creased faces of those who work the land from dawn to full darkness. The first man is the sour-faced revieur, appointed field foreman, a man used to organizing labor, used to silence when he speaks. The second, younger, with calloused hands and a tired sway to his gait, is named Tama. The reeve levels the accusation with ceremony, but not softness. The man Thomas has failed to plow the Lord's strips of land as deeply as required during his annual boon work, those 3 days of labor owed not for pay or barter. The furrows, the reeve says, were shallow, incomplete, lazy, an insult to the contract that ties man to Lord. You glance toward the accused. Thomas bows his head, unspoken tremor in his shoulders, and when he looks up, his voice is hoarse with cold as he speaks, not in denial, but in plea. "Mislay," he says softly, "but the ox he was sick would not pull. I tried, I worked what I could by hand." He does not protest the work condition, only the caw, and now you feel your inexperience like a stone in your lap because the earth does not speak Latin, and judgment is not measured in theory. In truth, you do not know how deeply the land must be plowed, or how many hours a man can swing a blade without collapse, or how much is enough, versus how much is mercy. You glance briefly. At your steward he gives no answer, only returns your gaze with calm cert. Because this is not his decision, it is yours. So you do the only thing that feels honest. You ask, you call upon 3 older men of the village, freemen, experienced, knowing they shuffle forward, gray-bearded and solemn, and you invite them to walk the fields, to examine the furrows, to look upon the sickly ox. For 30 minutes you wait in quiet tension, fire crackling in the hearth like a ticking clock. You sip warm wine, but eat nothing. When they return, faces lined with thought, they do not speak formally. They speak in turns, slowly, with the awkward ease of those unaccustomed to lordly presence, but used to judgment in the folds of nature itself. The ox, it seems, had fevered lungs. The work was shallow, yes, but perhaps honest. Perhaps you listen. Each word is a heartbeat. And then with all the calm you can summon, you speak. You rule that Thomas must offer reparations, not punishment. 3 hens, to replace what harvest might fall short, but no further sanction, no shame. The cost is not ruinous, only symbolic, a reminder, and a release. And at that moment, more than any high ceremony or silver clasp or sigilled ring, you understand what it means to govern him, not to command, to interpret, and to listen until something true becomes visible, to kneel in thought while remaining seated in pow, and then more cases. A dispute over firewood taken from your Lorgen forest, 2 women quarreling over a piglet that wandered into a cabbage plot, a pair of young peasants requesting permission to transfer a small strip of land between their families. It's a sort of request that must by custom be recorded and texture of your domain be you little by little. If the castle is your body, then this hall is its lung breathing in conflict, breathing out resolution, sometimes messy, sometimes absurd, sometimes poetic, always living, and you begin to see that the law here is not carved in marble, it is not sealed in wax or hung in scrolls from gilded walls. It lives in memory, in custom, in dispute, in quiet consensus. The law lives not in a letter, but in the dial for generations. These people have governed themselves with lords as anchors, not Osu, or not here to invent. Just Stewart tells you, later, as the people file out, that the Manor court is many things, and on some occasions, though rarely now, was once even divine. He tells you of ordeals by fire and iron where the gods themselves were called to judge, testing innocence by the clarity of scars. He tells you the church has outlawed such trials, calling them barbaric, but that the memory of them still slicks the stone on which your dais stands, that once, centuries ago, this floor saw hands burnt and wounds bandaged and fear of heavenly retribution. You glance downward, and for a brief moment the air feels heavy with ek. But then the fire crackles once more, and the room begins to empty, and what remains is not judgment, nor ecclesiastical fire, nor the dry parchment of unheaded words. You, seated in calm silence, the sound of chickens promised in compensation, ringing in your ears like coin, and you realize something else, something quiet and almost ten. This court, for all its power and ceremony and unshakable tradition, lives by equalane like a queen bringing down sentences with the swing of your voice. You suggest, Mel. You decide, Jen, like one guiding a river not into walls, but into proper curves. And when the last petition has been sealed, and the hall once more becomes a place of silence and sleeping firelight, you walk slowly back to your chamber, cloak drawn tightly, boots muffled against the rose outside. The clouds have begun to break. A single shaft of sunlight cuts through the western window, illuminating the chair you left behind. Your chair, it no longer looks like something meant to intimidate now. It simply looks like responsibility, made visible, and the stone beneath it, solid, ready, as are you neath it, solid, ready, as are you neath it, solid, ready, as are you. You sit beneath the dim amber light of a tallow candle, your fingers gingerly trace the hand-inked notations, your fingers gingerly trace. The room is quiet except for the faint rhythmic crackle of fire in the hearth and the faint metallic clinking of the keys at your side. Swaying gently as you lean forward before you lies the Castellan year-end account roll. Thick sheets of parchment, stiff with use, and slightly curled at the edges like old leaves. The ink has faded in some places, smudged in others, but the story written there is unmistakably alive, pulsing with columns of Roman numera, etched in the clear, deliberate hand of your steward and scribe. You stare at it for a long moment, brow furrowed. The numbers are both familiar and maddening. They add, they subtract, they account painfully, meticulously, but not easily, not like the numbers you grew up learning, those neat Arabic digits full of loops and elegance. These are sharp, awkward glyphs, all angles and rigidity. Vive, X, L, scene. You try to add a set of figures in your head, XVI, Ixind, while the answer coalesces eventually. It feels more like speaking through a closed door than reading something clicking. You ask your steward gently why the keep persists in this rather inefficient system. He smiles faintly and explains with a kind of amused affection that Roman numera, for all their inconvenience, carry a virtue modern numbers do not. They are devilishly hard to falsify. Try to turn a V into a fort, or an I into a Vik, or slightly alter the curve of a digit to steal from your lord, and you'll fail. There's safety in these craggy marks. They may slow the hand, but they protect the trayer. You glance back down at the account sheet and sigh, not from defeat, but a slowly dawning reverence. Everything here, everything, has a reason, not always efficient, not always elegant, but practical, purposeful. And your understanding of wealth, too, begins to shift, because as you look at the next page, listing not coin but chickens, grain, cheese, tanned leth, and even pigs bred for midwinter, you begin to see that gold is not your castle true currency. Not really. It is barely a portion of what flows through your domain. Here, riches wear feathers. They cluck and bleat and ferment. They fill cellars and coops and root cellars. They arrive not as taxes in silver, but as seasonal rhythms, gathered, bartered, hatched, harvested, given in duty. Nibe, some of your tenants owe you labor, boon work, or week work. 3 days of free toil each week on the domain field, not for themselves, but for you. Others bring rent in grain or salt pork, or once a year during St. Martin's feast, pack coopered barrel of home-brewed ale. These are called food renders, and they are your life-blow. You no longer live in the fantasy of endless coin. Your castle breathes in cycles of abundance and consumption. Milmew are liquid-ganned, but not in silver. You are wealthy in barley and oats, in smoked fish, in what hangs in the rafters, curing slowly through the dead of winter. You are wealthy in promises, in obedience, in weather forecasts and careful tallies. Your wealth lies in movement, and suddenly you understand yourself, not as keeper of a treasury, but as something more akin to a hydraulic engineer, carefully guiding the flow of grain from granary to oven, of meat from slaughter to stew, of wool from sheep to market. If the channels clog, Kim, the fruit rots too early, or the hay is mildewed, or taxes are mistimed, the entire body falters, flickers, shudders. You are learning to lubricate a machine with no gears but an astonishing number of mouths. It is then that your steward begins his second lesson, not in ink or law, but in stone. He takes you away from the fire, ere warmth one morning, and up a narrow tower stair, out through the highest doorway, and onto the curtain wall, smelling of lichen and iron, and it presses insistently against your shawl as you step out onto the narrow walkway that runs the length of the walls. Your hands touch cold mortar, your boots click against the aged flagstones. He murmurs, brazier skim, and indeed, from up here your entire keep unfurls like a living thing. You see the walls stretch like arms around the inner court. You see the fields in the distance hazy in morning mist. You see smoke curling from the kitchen chimney. A slow breath now. Your steward gestures to the edges, the battlements. They are that distinctive pattern you've seen in every painting, every childhood drawing of a castle. Crenellations, tooth and gap, solid and hollow behind every solid square. An archer might crouch through the gaps, called embrasures. Arrows might sing, sunlight streams through them now, but centuries of blood have passed beneath those same shafts of light. You run your hand lightly along the edge. The cold bites, but does not hurt. He leads you on, but does not hurt. He leads you onward. You come next to a segment of wall that bulges outward in soft angle. Me bygone, he explains. Binoir machicolations, stone pockets, gaps in the floor above the gate. You bend slightly, peering down, and sense the vertigo of proximity. Imagine boiling water poured through that gap, or worse, burning pitch rocks arrows. When attackers reached the gate, when they banged and scraped and pressed their crude ladders upward, these holes became instruments of wrath from inside your side. They were salke. You pass under one now. You come to the gatehouse, the thickest part of your wall. Your steward points to the ceiling of the tunnel-like passage within. Above you, small square hole, murder holes, he says calm. You pause. The name clashes so violently with your otherwise peaceful mood that you laugh, but only slightly, softly, unsure if it's appropriate. But yes, that is their name. They are not decorative. They are not theoretical. Should attackers breach the first portcullis, run under the archway thinking they had gained ground, they would find themselves trapped here, like ducks in a wooden box, penned between rising flames and falling blades. From above, soldiers would drop oil rocks. Waits fly, you look up once more. The holes stare back like empty eyes. And then, finally, you come to a strange little extension off the east flank of the tower, P-jut of stone like a balcony. But enclosed, the door creaks as you open it inside. A narrow, windowless closet. A stone bench with a round hole carved into it beneath darkness. A shaft there. The steward says, Buyu, garde-robe, your privy, your most private sanctuary. and yet still so unapologetic. Public, its contents drop directly down through the wall. In summer, the smell flows back in without permission. In winter, the cold creeps up like a fafremise. And it is like everything here, Danny, he explains almost sheepishly, that attackers have attempted to enter castles through these very shafts, that waste is not only a vulnerability of smell or status, he is a physical weakness in your otherwise secure walls, even your sanctuaries are suspect. Below you, a stable boy leads two shaggy ponies toward the stream. A washerwoman stoops over a bucket. One of your maids is shaking out a rug as dust flutters into sunlight like powdered sill. And you see it now, not as scenery, but as strategy. Every step, every sound, every faint breath of wheat dust and horse sweat and soil means the castle is not just built of stone. It is carried forward moment by moment by the quiet force of intelligence, made filly and every choice you make. How you stock the pantry, how you repair the gate, how you store your hay, how you calculate your grain, feeds a decision, which feeds a person, which feeds person, which feeds person, which feeds smart. From the cold stones beneath your fingers, to the tower whose peak touches mist, to the bronze key that swings again and again against your thigh with every measured step. You are not a guest here any longer. You are not a girl. You are not a fragile ornament of a distant crown. You are this castle of mind. And above all, you are its key. The air is alive with moan. From the inner courtyard rises a rhythm older than war drums, yet far more joyful. The soft shuffling of feet across stone, the clatter of wooden crates being pried open, the high-pitched laughter of a scullery girl newly entrusted with a cloth of gold-hemmed linen. Everywhere the scent of polish and roasting meat and melted beeswax mingles into something warm and anticipated. Something is coming, and not just plates, nor guests, nor noise. Not its is the subtle pressure of ceremony, the carefully measured pageantry of power mang. It is not a simple meal, not a shared table among friends, not a cozy wintering supper beneath a flickering candelabra where bread breaks in quiet humility. No, this is different. This is not about hunger. It is about declaration, Milne, about your name, your station, your place in the landscape of noble politics and regional memory. Tonight, you will show them who you are. And so, you prepare not with vanity, but with study. You descend into the kitchens 3 days before the banquet, not in silence, not hiding, but in presence, your keys chiming softly like a mantra, announcing again and again, I am here, I watch. Karen the cook greets you with fresh apron and hopeful eyes. He is broad-shouldered and flour-dusted, breath fogging slightly in the cool kitchen air as he guides you through a menu nearly the length of your arm. Venison cooked over coals and rubbed with juniper, river trout, caught fresh, soaked overnight in white wine and sage, peacocks, not one but 3, already plucked and prepared for a spectacle you have read of in books but never seen. The rare and terrible art of redressing a bird in its own shimmering finer. I knew shing a bird and the spice they come in small. Cloves, aniseed, ginger, shaved into thin golden pez. The cook lays them out for you, and even before you nod, you understand these spices are not for flav. They are for statuses, they are for spavor a dish. Truly flavor it in this time is to shout of wealth. Every pinch, every crumble, every drift of imported scent screams of your reach, your trade networks, your alliances, your silent, glittering grasp across distant oceans, down desert caravans, into the crimson silks of the eat. To have spice is to own, the whirly, excessively. You approve the rarest powders, the heaviest pours of scented wine. You do not flinch at the cost, because something in your bones tells you what this meal is not buying, but building, respect, presence. Legend, the feast will begin, as custom demands, with something sweet and light to open the humors. A theory you are now deeply familiar with. Perhaps a quince jam baked in sugared pastry, or stewed apples soaked in rose water and almond milk. It will falter then, false modesty, into cold meats then. Ascend there will be a whole pig, its skin crisped and glazed in honey. There will be 3 types of bread, white for nobility, anecdotes passed like butter, toast poured, and poured again. Adru, but the climax, the true center of the spectacle, is the subtlety, ironically not subtle at all. A showpiece dish, designed not for flavor, but amazement. Theater made edible. It might be a gelatin castle with flags made of candied citrus peel. It might be a pie that, when opened, releases a handful of live doves into the air. But no, this time, it is the peacock. You are there when the cook begins its transit. The bird is roasted gently, so as not to darken the flesh. Its feathers, removed earlier with the care of a seamstress unpicking silk, are dried and preserved, then lovingly pressed back into place over the meat. Its head, adorned with delicate foil, is reattached with careful stitches and wax pins. The body is brushed in saffron gold dust. Its tail spread to fullest fan, shimmered with ground, lapis lazuli, and honey glay. It looks alive, but it is not. It is a lie told in beauty, and it is purdy music in the air, lutes tuning gently in a corner, viols murmuring beneath nimble fingers. The hall glows with candlelight, hundreds of flames mirrored in polished shields hung on the wall. In goblets, in polished platters steaming with cloaked intensity, guests arrive in waves. Minor nobles, trusted captains, visiting couriers. The seating is meticulous, every place assigned by politics, not affection. Those seated closest to you belong to you. Those farthest away remain aspirasa. You do not merely eat, you demonstrate. The carving of meat is a ritual. The handing of trenchers to your favored guests is a statement. The offering of the choicest cut, perhaps the boary tongue, or the sweet meat tucked behind the shoulder, is not a gesture. It is a strategy. Even conversation becomes a measured performance, not idle murmurs but slow architecture. You ask the wine steward about this year of barrels from the southern slopes. He answers, flushed with pride. And others hear you compliment a neighboring lady on the embroidery at her sleeves, and she glows, but those near her. And your enemies, should there be any among them this evening, see all of it. But no moment earns as much gasped attention as when the doors at the back of the hall swing open, and 2 servants enter, holding between them the gilded peacock on a silver platter, feathers upright, eyes glinting from hand-painted beads, neck high, a single ring of smoke curling upward in illusion of breath. A silence falls. Your steward clears a path through the crowd, and the bird is placed at your high table before you. You lean slightly forward, not too much, just enough. You smile, palace-trained but genuine. Your guests look not at the bird now, they look at you. The grace with which you hold the 2-tined fork, the ease of your laughter. They do not see the hours spent in the kitchen, they do not see the months spent managing grain. They do not see the calculations behind every seat at the table. They see only this: here is a woman who rules, but with beauty, with feast, with awe. Because here a meal is not just nourishment. It is narrative. It is politics, dressed as pageantry. It is soft power coated in honey and studded with clod. It is a throne that moves, and tonight you sit upon it, not with blood or decree, but with velvet, cinnamon, and fye. The feast is over. The candles have burned low to their stubs, bleeding wax onto bronze sconces and wooden beams. The musicians have packed their lutes and lyres and vanished into the quiet hush. The laughter, the songs, the sudden peacock gasps. They all cling now only to the memory of the stones, like traces of perfume in an empty room. Your dining hall is silent. Your guests have gone, and you retreat. Not just to your chambers, but to yourself, because after the pageantry, the banquets, and the careful choreography of respect and dominion, there is still a woman here, a woman who needs corners and softness and space, not to command, but to bring. So much of your life is performance, presence, posture. Yet in these small hours, long after midnight has surrendered to the soft approach of dawn, you find a different rhythm, not the rhythm of duty, but of devotion. Abruf, your chambers are quiet. Fire crackles faintly in the hearth, and warm embers glow like half-closed eyes. Outside your window, mist curls along the turrets, and somewhere, far below, mean hound lets out one low, exhausted sigh. The world is asleep, and now in the privacy that exists only when every other eye is shut, you turn toward your moments of respite, of quiet labor. Some key emerges from beneath your writing desk inside, skeins of thread like waterfalls, silks in forest green and garnet, ivory and ink, thistle blue and spun gold, a hoop, a needle, a square of linen. You take it all into your lap and begin to embroider. Again and again and again, a rhythm steadier than politics, more predictable than hunger. This too is a kind of prayer. Hired to some, embroidery is just a pastime, but to you and to countless noble women before you is a language, an outlet, a territory. Your name is not sealed on parchment with the weight of law, but here with needle and silk you speak in color melman form. In symbol men, the older women gifted you designs, patterns, moral motifs. But you quickly learn to invent your own. You choose now to stitch not only flowers or saints, but secret. You embed small foxes just beneath your vines, birds tucked inside foliage that fly only for those who look closely. You sew your thoughts, your memories, your private spes, and as you sit there, listening to the sound of thread pulling cleanly through cloth, you wonder if history will name any of it. Mired across the room, resting beside your daybed, your most sacred possession lies open on the reading stand. Your psalter, a small hand-copied book of psalms and devotions, bound in embossed leather. The corners rubbed silky from use. The pages are vellum smooth, but stiff, like over-dried petals. Rich inks dance across the margins, scarlets and ultramarines with golden illumination, catching flame light in sudden sparks. The prayers inside are comfortingly familiar. The Latin phrases do not just roll from your mouth in obedience. They ground you. You read them in the flickering dark. You do not read for knowledge. Ari too, and more than once, as the candle burns lower, you turn the pages to something a little more indulgent. I read not scripture, but story. I read not the Psalms, but romance. There is, tucked away behind your psaltery leather spine, a second booklet, smaller, hidden, passed down from a lady whose name has faded into the dust of quired decades. A manuscript of Tev, Nigh, Dragon, Impossible Love. Do you know it by heart, yet you read it again? The lady in the tower, the knight across the sea, the falcon who returns at dawn. Of course you know it, isn't it real? Whose stories are not kept for what they say, they are kept for what they believe. And in this lonely hour, as the wax pools and the fire softens, it comforts you more than any castle wall. The idea that someone, somewhere once yearned and was brave and was kind, and that such things could mean something. As the story ends and the silence stretches, you rise from your cushioned bench and settle onto the stool beside your grave little harp, your psaltery mount. Not grand enough for courtly compositions, but soft enough for private ones. You place your hands gently on its strings. Each note you pluck sounds like breath on glass. You play to soothe the parts of yourself no audience sees. The melody is slow, uncertain at first, yet tender. It fills the room like dawn mist-light pale. Lingering at the edges, your fingers stumble here and there. You do not correct them, you let the notes fall where they may. This is not rehearsal, not performance. This is quiet, existence. And perhaps in some distant century they'll imagine you always robed in velvet, issuing decrees, orchestrating diplomacy from high-backed thrones. Perhaps they forget this, the smell of embroidery thread wound too tightly, the ache in your spine from leaning too long over vellum, the softness of a half-finished song echoing into the dark, but you will remember. These are the hours that made you peaceful, tender, invisible, the steady assembling of a soul. And then, like a brief wind before a rain, the tapestry of stillness is a knock, too soft to startle, too timed to be trivial. A maid, wide-eyed, apologetic, whispers a servant in name. You know well, fever cough. She cannot breathe. Martu. And just like that, you gather your night cloak and rise. No hesitation, no dramatics. You are no longer a woman reading by firelight. And someone in your household needs your hand. You descend the stairs barefoot, step by step, like memory moving downward into flesh. The castle is silent but not sleeping. You know every stair by feel, every alcove, every creaking door. In the back corridors of the East Tower, where the servants sleep, the air is different. There is a hush here not born of reverence, but worry in the saw, kind that wraps itself around the throat. You enter the small room. The sick girl lies on the cot, cheeks flushed with unnatural heat. Her eyes, usually full of sparkle, are rimmed with glassy fear. She sees you, the lady she follows like a shadow, and her breath calms just a little. You sit beside her, press your hand to her tem. The heat is alarming, but not unfamiliar. You call for hot water and a cloth for dried lungwort, leaves from their herb chamber, for willow bark soaked in warm mead, and then your tutor once mumbled over steaming tinctures that plants bear the markings of their healing uses. Lungwort leaves are speckled like diseased lungs. Willow lives in damp places and soothes swollen joints. The blue petals of heartsease look faintly like a weeping face, and so they must help the grieving or anxious heart. Eiten doctrine of signatures, that if you look closely, nature teaches you how to he. And so you brew, you whisky, you squeeze the girl in hand, and you stay. Not as a noble, not as a ruler, but as a human among humans, because beneath the velvet, in your palms, still breath on your lip, the moment passes. Fever ebbs, sleep comes. Brine you do not leave, not yet. Nine you stay long enough to feel the quiet return to the castle. From the highest turrets to this humble cot, there is balance again, and as you finally walk back to your chamber, the first gray blush of morning touching the sky, you feel not tired, not worn, but whole, because leadership is not always what others see. It is not always war, or law, or spectre. Sometimes it is simply staying awake when others fall ill. Sometimes it is knowing the name of the girl who sweeps your floor. Sometimes it is choosing a leaf because it looks like lungs and hoping it helped. You curl back into your bed just as the birds begin to stir, and in that soft in-between moment before sleep claims you, you realize you no longer imitate strength. It clings still to the corners of stone windowsills and the iron rings of the corners of stone, but you can feel it, subtle, certain. Knee-way winter slowly loosens its grip. You wake one morning to birdsong, faint at first, like a memory learning to speak, and find that even the wind feels different, as if it no longer cuts through wool and bone, but drifts softer, warmer, full of sky and thawed earth. Spring has not yet arrived, but almost melm, and in that, almost not in sound, not in drama, but in the way your chamberlain begins frowning at the grain numbers, the way the cook glances twice into his cheese cellar, the way the maids mutter to each other over dried herbs that have blackened too soon. Your stores are running low. You knew this would come. Every steward warned you by candlelight through the dark of midwinter. Mind the stores, my lady. The hunger months will arrive before the green ones do. And now they are here. It are a time the villagers call, quite simply, the hunger season, those late weeks of winter and early hints of spring when the last of the salted meat has gone gray at the edges, when eggs come few and small and bitter due to short days at hours, when the flour in the bins clumps with damp and dried beans begin to taste of stone. There is a strange quietness in the castle's rhythm, a kind of restraint you feel even in the kitchens. Emptier bowls, thinner stews, bread stretched with husk and barley. You still eat well, of course. You are the lady of the castle, but even your own meals are muted now, stripped of spice and show, and outside your hall, the people, children dig beneath the hedge for tender green roots, women boil nettles by the bucket, men scour the woods for rabbit, hoping to trap anything with a heartbeat. Some carry home cattail roots, pulled from the edge of the marsh, beat them into powder, and mix them with whatever flour remains. And always, always, eyes turned skyward with a bitter prayer toward the soil that is not yet blown, yet this hardship does not arrive alone. It rides in, paired with ritual, because as fate, core perhaps faith, would have it each year, the hunger season dances hand in hand with Lent, the holy 40 days of fasting and abstinence, behung, Easter's bloom, and suddenly the empty meat hooks do not just signify scarcity, they become symbols of sacrifice in this world. Need and holiness blur. The friar speaks often now on discipline, on giving up as Christ gave, on the virtuous hunger that brings the soul closer to heaven. The people listen, some with reverence, some perhaps just. When you have no cheese, it is easier to say you have renounced. It is among the strangest wisdoms of this time how scarcity is sanctified. The absence of meat becomes piety. The replacement of eggs with ground almonds becomes virtue. Hunger becomes not the grinding panic of poverty, but a sacred offering. In a way, Lent transforms a suffering community into a choir not by lifting a single note, but by bearing a single silence. To get, and you bear it too, not in hunger perhaps, but in vigilance, because while your table remains filled, you see what lies beneath it, the tally sheets of livestock, thinning the hurried messenger from outlying villages. You summon your steward, you walk through the stores by torchlight, you take stock of what the kitchens have reserved, you send baskets of coarse bread to families with too many chill, you allocate logs to a woman who kneels weeping outside your hall saying she has burned her chairs just to keep her infant from freezing. You do this not with regret and not with spectacle, but with responsibility. Because there is something you now understand that no book could teach you. Do not rule by decree. You rule by presence, and your true power is your watching, noticing. And though you cannot erase the hunger season, you can blunt its edge. Your household survive, green shoots begin, at last, to fracture the cold soil in the garden. The first hens lay again, the air begins to change, slowly, slowly. The rhythm of hardship gives way to another kind of preparation. Shun softer, light one, for connection man. You send a letter, its pages are sealed with your sigil, its words carefully chosen, equal parts, warmth, honor, and calculation. It is addressed to the noble you once thought of as distant, political, irrelevant. But now you write not with fear, but as an equum. You propose an exchange. You issue an invitation and you send with it gifts, melm. Not jewels, not coin, gifts steeped in the vocabulary of land. They're all stag taken by your hand in the last hunt of autumn, cleaned, preserved, salted, not because he is hungry, but because it tells him. And you send, wrapped in linen and sealed with pride, the true treasure. A hand-copied volume produced within your scriptorium by your own scribes, from your own stores of ink and parchment, its pages filled with drawings of your lands, how the river carves westward along your sheep slopes, how the old mill stands solid across from the barley field, how your men stand at arms. You do this not to impress you, do it to define who you have become, because you remember now, in a way, memory becomes muscle, how when you first arrived here, you were merely one daughter, someone one, thrust across the map of politics like a silk-wrapped obligation. You were sent here because it was safe, murity because it was. Isolate because here you could be content, but here you were not. Contained you grew teeth, you grew muscle. Not of the sword, but of the mind, of patience, of discipline, of a needle pressed between the ribs of policy and grace. You have become something no one expected, not simply a lady, but a sovereign melm of soil, of silence, of flame and frost and feast. You have learned to read stone the way others read scholars. You have learned that rumor travels faster than riders. You have learned that the truest marker of power is not how many bend their knee, but how many sleep knowing you are watching over them. And perhaps one day you will not be remembered. Not in books, not in tapestries, but this castle will remember. In its gates still strong from the stones you repaired, in the paths between field and hall that remain clear because you saw the floods coming before anyone else. You stand now again on the tower, highest point. The wind combs through your hair as the land rolls before you, green, brown, gold. People walk below, like ants, lifting sacks, mending roofs, laughing even. The church bell chimes far off, calling them to ordinary things. You smile. Not because you think this place perf, but because now, at last, it feels, at the long quiet shadows that peel away behind you, there was a story you once believed, that power belonged to those with crowns, with courts, with fire-dipped sigils stamped onto scrolls, but there's another kind of sovereignty, the quiet kind, the local kind, the kind forged from presence, held not in gold, but in hands, and you, at last, have stepped fully into it. The castle stands, the people eat, and the sun rises, at the pace you've come to love, slow, ancient, relentless like you. And when the stars return tonight, blinking their old cold light across your slumbering land, they will watch the truth that a woman came here, was underestimated, and became a queen in everything but name, not from a crown, but from the way she stayed mom, and still stays. Always. Sleep now, my ruler. The land is quiet beneath you. Rest gently within its rhythm.